It is Tuesday, broadcasting again here in Calgary, Seatown. Gotta love it. What a great day that was yesterday. And we will continue again at the Elbow River Casino, the Calgary home of rawmikerichards.com. Looking forward to Katrina LeMay-Doan, one of Canada's sweethearts. It's no longer Anne Murray. And I know it wasn't Rita McNeil. They said it was, but that's a big sweetheart. That's you might want to stay away from that one. Also, we'll talk a little bit about what's happening actually here in Calgary, which is very busy, actually on the world scene of sport. And it just so happens it is going on at the same time as we happen to be here. International bids, sporting bids of huge nature, really. When you start talking about hosting an Olympic Games, in this case the winter, which they have done already, when you start talking about World Cup as well. I know that has surfaced before of talking Canada. Of course, that would be, I would think, more nationally motivated, where you'd have certainly cities from around this country thinking that they could host a World Cup. Now, you saw that the women had done it. I think that was a pretty successful World Cup. Could Canada possibly be in that category? I think, for one, having the World Cup in this country would be fantastic. You saw that it was a pretty good result for our men's national team. It really has been our women in terms of carrying the national banner when it comes to soccer/footy in this country. They have been one of the, I think you could argue, maybe the best national team that we've had in the last decade. That women's program has been just, with Christine Sinclair, just marvelous. I mean, spectacular. And, for as little women's sports as that I watch, and let's be honest, I don't watch any. If you get into a conversation about, collegiately and so on, like, I just don't know because I don't watch it. And I'm not a WNBA guy, so I can't even comment on that. But when you start talking about soccer and football, when you talk about the women's national team in this country, they have been nothing short of spectacular. And as I said, in terms of, I guess when you use the word amateur, it's a little different because some of them actually do get paid around the world where they actually do play soccer professionally. Some of them do. That's a different conversation, but I think overall we're not talking about NHL players. You're not talking about NBA players, so that's a little bit of a different discussion. So once again, would that be something of interest in this country? I think it has to be. But again, when we get into the conversation of a city hosting an Olympic Games, I think it really depends on the city, and I think almost culturally where that city fits. If you were to ask Toronto about it, I think almost to a person, I don't think Toronto would be remotely interested at all in having a Summer Olympic Games. Do you remember the Pan Am Games? We talked about it yesterday a little bit. Really, I got to be honest, I don't think there would be a huge interest there. Once again, we're broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino here in Calgary. Got a little crazy yesterday, as you'd imagine, and as each day continues, I'm going to make it just a little crazier. Cuckoo, cuckoo. I love it. Yesterday, went on the fan, caused a little bit of a stir, a little bit of excitement going on the Fan 960 for the first time in 6 years. But I loved it with Kelly Kirsch, the program director. We had a lot of fun, a little bit of reminiscing, some serious stuff, as there were a lot of questions about what happened all those 6 years ago, and even more curious, maybe what's going to happen in the future. So that was a lot of fun as rawmikerichards.com. In terms of its numbers yesterday, there's a lot of different metrics and analytics, but yesterday we trended number 3 in the city yesterday, this broadcast, which I thought was pretty cool. And all the subscriptions, whether it was on YouTube, rawmikerichards.com, or the Facebook page, it all went up. So I appreciate that. And as you know, Bet Regal, when you click on rawmikerichards.com, the first of the brand new sponsors that are going to be announced this week, because there's more coming, but we're thrilled. If you join up on Bet Regal, you are helping me continue what I need to do and to keep this going. So we're going to bring in one of my favorites, and it's been a while since I've seen Katrina LeMay-Doan as she makes her way. I think she has, oh my God, I think that's straight vodka. Wow, it's while it is 11 o'clock, and I got to be honest, if you're a Western Canadian, once it hits 11, I think you're free to go. Whether you've won gold medals or not, I think that's how it works. And now she joins me. Katrina, thanks so much for joining me on rawmikerichards.com. I imagine when you heard what the name of the show is, you might have thought, I don't know if this is a good idea or not.
I have questioned it, that's for sure.
So great to see you in a week that's, oddly, as I just mentioned to the audience, there's a lot of decisions being made right now with Canadian athletics, and in particular Calgary. When you start talking about the Olympics, it's a city that had spectacular Olympics beforehand in '88. But so in we look forward in 2000. We're talking 2000 what bid would this be for?
2026.
2026. Is there a feeling amongst the city, amongst the country, amongst its athletes? Why the bid again, Katrina?
Well, it was interesting, and I was in council all day yesterday as the team presented. I'm on that committee, so it's been a really interesting process to go through. But right now, when you say there's a decision to be made, the decision is probably that there's no decision yet.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is administration now is going to come back next week and give recommendation to council, then council decides. Our recommendation has been more time. The reason for that is everything's changing within the IOC. First Agenda 2020, but then they're now coming back to Calgary, to CBEC, which is the Calgary Bid Exploration Committee, and saying, hey, there's a shortfall in money. Let's discuss how we can do that. Because right now they're looking at the financial framework. It doesn't work.
Right.
I mean, all these cities are dropping out. But if you look at a city like Calgary that has the legacy from '88, we're the only city in the world to use every single legacy facility. And that's pretty impressive.
And rare.
Very rare.
Yeah.
And so the facilities are still world class. They're still great. Look at the Olympic Oval, look at Winsport, look at Canmore. But they do need some upgrading if we're talking 9 years from now. So if we want to host again, which if we look at it from a sports side, the history with Vancouver, the reason Vancouver was successful was because of '88. My generation is because of '88. So we really need another games in Canada. It would be great for Alberta. It'd be great for Calgary. But we need to make sure financially it makes sense. And people would assume I come from the sport world that I would say yes, but my kids are being raised in this city. So do I want them to have a big tax bill at the end of it?
Exactly.
No, not at all. So I'm looking at this from an open mind as well.
Katrina LeMaidon joining us here on rawmike.richards.com. It's interesting to hear someone talk who has participated in the games, been a part of our national program. And the one thing in talking about Vancouver that I think is interesting, and for me, it was a real line in the sand that our athletes made that was different than me being 54. Growing up, a lot of athletes would say, of national caliber, Canadian, would say, well, a lot of times you went to get the jacket. And in Vancouver, there was this literally finger pointing to that podium, as they called it, own the podium. And we weren't shy about it. And not only did they perform, all our athletes, but more importantly, and I've said this time and time again, our female athletes are, well, look at you, but spectacular, well-spoken, great sense of humor, a real humility about it. And I must think, every time, those girls kept, hitting the podium, then they'd go and be interviewed on television, where they were just nothing but the kind of individuals, as a parent, as a coach, and as a teacher, I'd say, you want that to be representative of your country, and I just think our women athletes are nothing short of spectacular, and it really was emphasized in Vancouver. And since that time, not that to say that the men obviously aren't important, but when I see NHLers going out there, it's just a different universe. It's a different world. I'm not making that comparison where you have a young girl who's at the University of Portland or wherever it happens to be. It's a little different than Sidney Crosby and Jerome McGinley. So I just think on the national stage, I don't know if I can think of anything more impressive than our women athletes.
I'm just going to ask you to keep talking.
Oh, well.
Because as you talk about how great women athletes are, I'm like, ooh, that sounds great.
Well, hey, if that does something for you, tell me. I can go for a couple hours here. Don't get me started.
No, but it was impressive in Vancouver, and I think that's where really the women on the team made the mark, and it's continued. I mean, if you look at Rio, right, it was the almost entirely the women's show, and having a daughter who's 13.
13 already? Your daughter's 13?
She's outside in the car waiting for me.
I thought,
like,
her daughter's coming and she's probably 5. No, 13?
She's 13.
Oh my God.
I know, and for her to see all these young women, and she just started wrestling this year, and then she got a medal from one of the matches from Jasmine Meehan and met Erica Wiebe, and for her to see women who are successful, it's great because it shows her that anything is possible. And we're getting to the point in our society where, we're talking the talk that women and men are equal, but if you look at boards, if you look at companies, we're not there yet. We're not there. So from that perspective, to have that role model side for young girls, it's incredible. But we still put Olympic sport and quote-unquote amateur sport at a different level. I would say we have the support, but we still don't really have the support. Professional sport is there, and you know what? I love going to games, Flames games, Stampeder games, Rider games, because I am Saskatchewan. I know.
I was afraid that was going to come up, but we almost got into a heated discussion before this started about when you go to a Stamp game. If you go to a restaurant and the staff is wearing Rider jerseys, like some of the establishments were. One guy said, "I'm not eating here." I said, "Seriously, you said that?" "Yeah. This is Calgary, and this is a game at McMahon, so I don't want to eat here." And so the general manager made some of the girls change their shirts, and I said, "But it is the one town, And I said, I think I can speak to this after the 6.5 years I spent here. Of all the sports where you wouldn't do that, the only reason I think it gets a pass, at least for me, is there's probably 250,000 Flatlanders who live here. I mean, it's an enormous part of the city, and it's the kind of rivalry where it's like, like cousins or brothers or whatever, sort of jabbing you in the side. It's not ugly. It's not angry. There are some cities where it's like that, and I just think that, for the CFL and for Saskatchewan in particular, I'm giving them a pass on that.
You have to give everybody a pass. I mean, I work for Sport Calgary, which is grassroots sport in this city. I have lived here for 29 years, but I'm from Saskatoon, and December 1st I have a Rider Christmas toque that I wear. So, I mean, forgive me, but as I was saying, the professional side, people are there supporting. But we have World Cups and World Championships of luge and bobsleigh and speed skating in this city every single year. The Pyeongchang Olympics are 7 months away, and yet we have a hard time filling these venues free to the public, maybe a $5 or $10 ticket, telling people, hey, these athletes are going to be the ones competing in the Olympic Games in a few months' time, yet we can't get people out supporting. So it gets a little frustrating.
I think too, Katrina, and I've always said this, that there are some countries that culturally, that there's not the obsession with that it has to be professional or in a league for us to give it its love. And there are some countries, when I look at a lot of the Nordic countries, I look at Australia where they realize the value in amateur sports, and it really doesn't matter what sport it is, because they deem it to be important. Their kids go into it, and then that means, culturally, corporations just want to be a part of it. Now here I think some of your corporate partners are fantastic and they're great, but you're still going to have to make that pitch. You're still going to have to go and convince them that it's the right thing to do, as opposed to other countries where maybe their sons and their daughters themselves, they've all been a part of an amateur program. I think that's the difference to me. It's still you still got to sell it.
We do have to sell it. The one thing, and we're getting a lot better as a country talking amateur sport. We are a big country. Summer and winter sport. And Australia focuses on a few sports. Mm-hmm. Same with Germany. I mean, they're sliding sports. They do so well. But we do have a lot of sports that we support. We just have to acknowledge that high performance, we're not talking elitism. We support that because they are the inspiration for that next generation. Will maybe 1% get to that level? Yes, but that doesn't matter, because it's the fact that we want those athletes there to be able to be role models for our kids. I'm leaving tomorrow morning for Winnipeg. It's the Canada Games for the Summer Games.
Yes.
And it's the 50th anniversary. It's one of the most successful products, and yet so many people still aren't aware of it.
I bet you if we went through the casino now and started talking to people about the Canada Games, they would have had no idea what you just said.
Yeah, and
they've heard of it.
Yeah.
And they might see it occasionally on TSN or something. But it's not something that they have marked down on their calendar.
And yet if you look, it's coming to Alberta in 2019. Red Deer has the Winter Games, so that's in a year and a half. But if you look at the percentage of Olympians and now Paralympians, because there's the para side as well at Canada Games, if you look at the percentage, about 3/4, close to 70% of the of the Olympic team is Canada Games alumni. About 70% of Olympic medalists are Canada Games alumni. So Sidney Crosby, you were talking about him?
Yeah.
He's Canada Games alumni.
See, I'd be on a trivia.
Andre DeGrasse. He won medals.
They might get Andre,
Games.
but I can guarantee you if someone said Canada Games with Sidney Crosby's name in it, there'll be a blank look.
Yeah.
And and sometimes when you start talking about and here this morning as we're broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino, the new home of Mike Richards in Calgary, which we appreciate, rawmikeRichards.com. The monies, when we talk about corporations being involved, sometimes I think people don't really understand the actual nuts and bolts of really what we're talking about. And I think about years ago having some of the girls in bobsleigh and just how much the sleds cost. And some of these, in the day, you had parents putting up second mortgages so they could do this. And to me, I thought, okay, well, quite frankly, that's unacceptable. This is a sport that we're pretty good at. We have some phenomenal athletes that take part in it. And if a corporation wants to put the money where their mouth is, then I'm taking a look at it and saying, you can't ask people from parts of this country to put up a second mortgage on their house so they can just participate. That's not about winning. It's not about sponsorship. That's just, well, maybe it is about sponsorship. Are we still living in that world?
It's getting better, and now I've more involvement with the Canadian Olympic Committee, and they're really branching out and helping athletes, and there are more programs to help athletes. My dad paid my rent until the year I retired, and so I had some corporate sponsorship, but again, you're talking about not working, you're talking about eating properly, a lot of training expenses, a lot of equipment expenses.
Okay, let me ask you something, considering just how good you were in your sport. If you're, and you probably could be a Dutch girl if you didn't say anything, people probably say, of course she's from Holland. That's not happening for you as a speed skater over there. You're probably one of the most famous people walking down the street.
We in Holland are like the NHL players. I mean, when I had my daughter, it was on their national news. In May 2004, and I was in the hospital here in Calgary under a fake name because so many Dutch media were calling that they put me under a fake name.
Really?
But it was on their national news, and I thought, oh my goodness, only in Holland. But if I had lived in Holland, not that I would want that sort of notoriety, because you realize you can't just go out and be a quote-unquote normal person, but you would make millions, and it's not about, you don't choose sport to make that money. I mean, it is a choice, and I want people to understand that. It's a great life, it's a hard life, but it's a choice we make. But you also, most winter athletes, especially winter, end their career in their 30s, and most summer do. Summer often have a chance to finish their degrees because of the way that the competitions work. Most winter athletes finish their career without their degree. I had 2/3 of mine, it's gone. And so I often say to corporations also is that look at what these athletes come with. Perhaps they don't have this first thing that you list on a job description, being a degree, but they have life skills. They've dealt with stress. Many athletes are fully bilingual. They're able to relate to people, and they're often good communicators. So that's my message often to corporations. And, I've been fortunate with Sport Calgary that I can work with sport, I can work with people, and they gave me a chance. And it's been great. But again, it's, in my 40s, and you were saying your age earlier, I don't necessarily have to tell you my exact age.
It doesn't matter. Trust me, it doesn't matter.
Well, I was going to say Google it. It's probably on Wikipedia. But they gave me an opportunity in my 40s, my first official job interview. But that's pretty scary.
Wow, at 40.
Yeah, and
Well,
in my 40s.
Yeah.
Not 40.
Okay.
Older than 40.
Okay.
But, that's often what I tell corporations is it's about supporting athletes, but it's also about the after. There are some programs now to help athletes, but when you retire as a female in your 30s, you want to have kids, and
as a human being, you want to do things that are natural.
Yeah, and so that was a big part of my life, and then I started with the media side. But just this year, I have told CBC, I did the broadcast last year, but I told CBC I was walking away, and now I'm volunteering, and I'm going to work with the Olympic team in Pyeongchang. So that was a hard decision, but it's something that I felt was right for me.
Once again, broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino, the new home of rawmikeRichards.com in Calgary. Katrina LeMay-Doan joining us here. And, of the things that have come up since I've been here, sort of watching, the local news, and there's so much kind of that's going on. We mentioned, obviously, the an Olympic bid, but also, that talk of having the men's World Cup in Canada. So that would be more of a national sort of feel, right? There would be games. Are we saying it would be centered somewhere? Would it look similar to what the women did? Do you have any connection to that?
No, what I've heard, because that has come up in our Olympic talks, because the federal government has said they will support a large event internationally, sort of once every 10 years. So people have talked about the World Cup. Would that be where the money would go? But, that's split between, I believe, Canada, U.S., and Mexico, I think.
Right, right.
So we would have a few games. That would be great, but it wouldn't be considered our event.
Hosting it, yeah.
It wouldn't be a hosting event. So when we talk Olympic side, that's completely different when we're talking federal government, because obviously we need, from an Olympic side, the federal government is very involved in that.
Would we need then, currently you're looking at McMahon Stadium that even in CFL terms is now strangely one of the oldest buildings. Does that mean you would be looking at a new facility? The cost of a new stadium really is what I'm talking about.
No, the entire plan. And again, I don't know, much of it has been released to the public, but not everything. And most of it will, minus a few things that can't be released to the public. But within the budget, we're not talking a new facility. We would need use of a new facility, talking an arena, because we need hockey side. We also need adaptability for the international side, for that's often figure skating and short track speed skating. Short track mandatory to use an international sized arena, but when we're talking facilities, we would be using the Olympic Oval, which is world class, which is busy right now with camps of young kids, but also international skaters. We would be using Winsport, which has continued to build on its success, and the track is already being upgraded for the sliding sports. We would be using Canmore, which is still world class, which is hosting all of those things. So we would be reusing most of the facilities, but we would need use of another facility, not necessarily a McMahon Stadium, but an arena.
Well, you mentioned the speed skating facility, and for those that who are watching really around the world right now, the majority in Canada, but we certainly have a lot of listeners elsewhere. I think it's interesting when you can talk about something that was built for 1988 and still be of world-class quality. Mm-hmm. I mean, for whoever was a part of building that, and for the minds that went behind the blueprints and the architecture, that's got to be a little bit of a rarity too, is it not? Because something that's that old is not really that relevant in terms of an actual physical structure. But that's incredible that it still is.
By 2026, most of the facilities would be almost 40 years old. But here we are, 30 years from the opening, almost the 30 years to the anniversary of the opening of the Olympic Oval. And there has been work redone with the air system, with the roof, but it is incredible. I mean, the ice techs, they know the ice. People love the ice here. Because we have altitude, it's very fast, so it's competitive with Salt Lake City. But it's the whole environment, being attached to the university, the whole team involved there. People don't understand how incredible that facility is. And yet, it is world class, but the mandate of the Olympic Oval is 1/3 high performance, 1/3 public, and 1/3 university students. So you go there any time of day and there are people running stairs, running the track, other high performance athletes using the track. There's learn to skate, there's rec hockey. So it's not just high performance, and there are so many thousands of people right in this city of Calgary that have never been in the Oval, because they think they don't belong.
Right.
But it's a place for the public. It's a place where my kids learn to skate. It's a place where I see new Canadians come, and they have the skate aid. It's this little metal contraption. I don't know if you've ever been to it or maybe used one of those.
I've never used that, no.
Have you ever skated on the Oval? Ooh,
I've never skated on the Oval. I've been to the Oval, but I've never skated on it.
Well, shame on you.
Well, I'm going to have to try it. I'll be back every 3 months. I'm coming back every 3 months. Yeah.
Well, I think you need to get out there.
I've never worn, it's funny, in my town, so in Ontario, hockey playing town, so Keith Acton, who you might remember in the NHL, his family, he speed skated. He speed skated. So looking at those skates, I've never even put on those skates. They look horrifying. They look like, Freddy Cougar skated. Those would the skates would look like. I mean, you can chop meat. That's salami cutting with those things.
I think it's a challenge. I think you should do your show from the oval. You should go on the ice, and you should wear a skin suit.
I don't know. Well, the ostomy bag might not look good on it. I'll tell you that that's not a crowd pleaser. So maybe by that time, hopefully, surgeons, let's work on getting it off. You just heard, it's Katrina Lemay-Doan saying, we'd like to see you in a skin-tight suit. I'd like to do that, but not with this. It really hurts the buffet. But thanks for bringing that up. I'm up for a challenge. I would definitely do that.
We should get out there. We should get on the ice.
Now, speaking of speed skating, when you look at our national program, there's a lot of things that Canadians would more or less be aware of. So when we look at women's soccer, we talk about men's soccer, there's the track team. You see Andre, what he's doing over in the Diamond Series, and just what a spectacular young man that he really is. And skiing but speed skating, we don't know, and unless it comes up every amount of years, we don't have a connection still on again how we're doing as a national program, men's and women's. How are we doing?
Every sport is cyclical. Speed skating, as a general, it comes under short track and long track. Most of us grew up doing both sports, and kids still do, but once it gets to the Olympics, it's definitely two separate sports. We're still, especially short track, top of the world. They actually have their Olympic trials in Montreal starts in 3 weeks. It's incredible.
Now, that's the one that is in the hockey rink. That's where, isn't that Apollo guy that was?
Apollo Antonono.
Yeah, I thought he was really annoying. I was annoyed by the hair. I was annoyed by his name. Sorry, Greek people. Sorry. I love the Greeks. I love you. But I looked at it and said, that's a crazy kind of. It looks like roller derby.
People call it roller derby.
It is roller derby.
It's very strategic.
You wouldn't have done that, would you?
I did it, and at my 2 Canada Games, I did short track. So I did both until I made national team. But it goes with the personality. So I have the personality of long track. I don't like. I just don't like people controlling a race.
Don't touch
for
me,
Yeah,
Katrina. Don't touch Katrina.
I'm a control freak, so I need to control my own race. I don't want somebody else to control my race. And somebody described it once that we're more like the skiers and short track's more the snowboarders.
Totally,
So
that's a great comparison.
It really is, and long track speed skaters are usually older. It's just you just kind of evolve into one or the other. So long track, we still have success. I mean, Denny Morrison, he has 4 Olympic medals. We'd have to start counting, and he's back at it. He's had a rough couple of years, but we have the chance of medals. I would say overall as a whole team, we're not quite as strong as some of the other years, but the program is great. The Olympic Oval, and that's the main training center for long track. They have done such a great job at developing the athletes, at continuing to develop them as whole people. But again, we're competing with the Dutch, and the Dutch right now are dominant.
As you mentioned, that's the NHL to them. Some
really
of those sports. Is it a sport that changes much? I mean, sometimes we talk about golf, for instance, where we look at the equipment, we look at the balls, we look at the shape of the guys. I mean, they don't look like they did back in the 70s. They now talk about things like training their core. It's evolved into something completely different. Hard to make the comparison. Different sports are like that. Is speed skating one of those where it evolves differently, or is it still basically the same thing, even fundamentally?
Basically, it's the same. There have been evolutions. Indoor skating, then the clap skate. They continue to work on the suit. They continue to work on the blades. But what they are changing is the ISU, which is the international governing body, which is figure skating and speed skating. They understand that they need to make it more viewer friendly. So the 10,000 meter, as much as the Dutch love that, and if you understand the sport, it's exciting. But to watch it on TV, to watch a 15-minute race of going around and around a 40-meter track, it's not that exciting.
Maybe make it like NASCAR. Maybe get some sponsorship down the side. Maybe the odd elbow would be good.
But it's not even one race. You have to watch 20 of those races.
Okay, well, yeah,
so,
that's
it's
a crowd
just 2
killer.
people at a time. So they've talked about, you don't want to get rid of an event, but they might. I mean, they introduced the mass start. Yvonne Blondin, who's a Canadian, she's one of the top. She's a good medal chance for Pyeongchang. But they're doing more events that are viewer-friendly. The Team Pursuit, I believe that was 2006 that it came on as an Olympic event. That's
right.
the 3.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the cycling.
People kind of like that, I think.
Yeah, and it's fun because it's quick, it's exciting, but it's engaging. And so, I think these governing bodies realize that they have to make it more exciting. They have to make it look at the X Games and how popular they are. There has to be a point to where these events are, there's a level of sexiness to it.
Well, I think, snowboard cross, anything when they've crossed, really, and you nailed it, really, the influence of the X Games. I mean, it's the generation that's pushing. If you don't appeal to them, then you know what? Then your event is dead. Then there's no more interest in, I got to be honest, the Summer Olympics. There are some events I look at there and I think, why do we still do this? Who is watching? No, not against the fencing people. I'm sure, but maybe I think they should be real swords. I think that we need to do something. It's instead of guys like the biathlon. When they do that shooting wise, maybe it's a deer or something out there. I need to see something that's going to make me want to.
Only in Alberta can you say that.
Probably Saskatchewan, northern Saskatchewan. You can get away with that too. And so if you're not appealing to the masses, you're fooling yourself because it's going to die. It will die.
Yeah, and they're seeing that. I mean, they're seeing a lot of the live coverage is not happening. A lot of it is being tape delayed. A lot of it's online, and yet then sort of the new and exciting sports. But you still have the viewership of the traditional sports overseas, and that's probably the most exciting part about even competing overseas. You talk about biathlon and cross-country skiing and some of those Nordic sports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking Scandinavia. They will watch that for 10 hours straight, and they watch every single person. And it's the same with speed skating, right? They have every competition live. The ones that are in Calgary, the World Championships, I mean, at least we show some, but we show an hour of it, where the Dutch, some of my friends are texting me, wow, and how about this part? I'm like, I didn't see that. Yet they're in Holland watching this event in Calgary because they are seeing every second. So it is, there is the viewership, just not in this country. And we just have to adapt a little bit. But I think we just have to have people understand who these athletes are. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe that's always been a little bit of my battle.
That's really
social media
important,
helps.
though. Yes.
But you want to know their stories. If you know their stories, then you're personally more engaged.
Katrina, I say the same thing about the CFL. I said, these guys, take a look at it. I said, if you actually knew how some of these guys got here, if you knew their stories, if you knew how they got into university, if you found out how they got drafted, you find out some of their, real difficulties in becoming a professional athlete, then you'd start to understand why. I mean, certainly in Western Canada, we all love the CFL. In Toronto, it's so much harder to sell, but I don't think they know any of the stories of, aside from a Ricky Ray and some of the bigger names, they just don't know. And I think once you start doing that, then you become emotionally invested, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, how many stories can we tell, though? But I guess that's always been my battle. And, I'll take Canada Games again. The last few years, I've done the broadcast for that. And trying to tell the story. In Prince George in 2015, there was a Nunavut badminton player. It took him 4 days to get from Nunavut, from his town, to Prince George. I mean, he was not going to win a medal, but how incredible was it that he crossed the entire country in every direction to get to the games? I mean, that was, to me, that just made it. And I opened one of the shows with telling the story and showing the town he was from, because I thought, how neat, right?
Yeah,
like, people now, he's going to have extra 5 fans. Great.
Yeah.
Cheer for that Team Nunavut badminton player.
It's a great story. Katrina, thanks so much for joining us here today. It's been, it's been awesome catching up with you, and hopefully people understand, that the importance of, not just tuning in every 4 years. I mean, if this is really important to you, you can do something about it. And if you're a corporate person, you just heard the story, you know who Katrina is, obviously. There are ways to become involved, and if you do, hopefully you see it that it's important enough that you want to do that. So I thank you so much for coming, and you're just wonderful as always.
I appreciate it, and I guess we'll see you on the Oval.
You're going to see me on the Oval. I will have, on the suit, I just want to see some flames, maybe some flames coming off it.
Okay, we're going to have to make this happen.
And even, I'll get Rolly's here, to help out with the Calgary colors, the Calgary Flames colors. So we'll have the flames. Rolly, don't be so lazy. Do something for once, for God's sakes. And then I could have maybe on the side, Love Bandit. Yeah, Love Bandit. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Katrina, thank you so much. That's awesome. Katrina Lemay-Doan joining us here on rawmikerichards.com. Wonderful as always. And again, another example of why I think around the world they look at our women national athletes and think, what is in the what is in the water in Canada, because these people are fantastic. You see how grounded, humble, funny, and stunningly gorgeous, obviously, and I just think our women athletes are great. So I appreciate that. Here, you've probably never heard so much about amateur sports or speed skating ever on not only my show and the other show, but it really shows you some insight into what goes into it, the kinds of costs and the kinds of sacrifice that our amateur athletes go through, and that was a great time with her today. So we appreciate it as we broadcast live from the Elbow River Casino. I don't know if you've seen more of this magic. Look at that. Look at the cowboy hat with the thing on it. You see, what's really cool is you go in and play the slots wearing just this and Depends. I think it's a good look. I think it's a look that's very relevant. And I got to be honest, I don't think it's the first time. I'm just throwing it out there. That's all I'm doing. Also throwing things out there. Now I sit here and talk about Calgary stories, but what about Jerome McGinley if he were to come back to the Calgary Flames? Would you like to see it? Would you do it? You know, this is, in some of the names that are out there that have not picked up contracts currently as we speak. You know, you're also talking about Jaromir Jagr, which I don't understand why people aren't jumping on that. I don't care how many minutes he plays. Maybe he specializes only on like a power play. Did you see, even with Florida, even still at this age, how he dominates down low? Do you see the hands? His ability to control the puck around the net? No? Nothing? I think even in terms of the marquee value. Like, honestly, think about this for a second. Jaromir Jagr in Las Vegas. What? Who's not doing that? Come on, Vegas. You wouldn't want to see, so you go down, so I'm sitting in a city that loves, I think there's 100 flights a day that go to Las Vegas from Calgary. You mention Las Vegas in the city, and people kind of, they can't even think the rest of the day. Vegas. Jaromir Jagr going down and seeing, and you're telling me I would pay money, not unlike Seinfeld when they went on the Kramer, the Kramer tour. I would go on the Jaromir Jagr tour of Las Vegas. Can you imagine where he's taking you? The club scene, the ladies. Jaromir Jagr would be stunning in Las. And if I'm Vegas, and basically you're getting assets to give assets away. There's going to be some guys who are going to show up and aren't going to stay. I don't see why you wouldn't do it. I think it would be great. Shane Doan, for what he's talking about, and even term for Shane Doan, and I think Russell he scored 6 goals last year? Unless you're looking for some sort of veteran leadership, and trust me, there's only so much that you're going to pay for that. I think it was Brooks Like that joined me, a couple of years ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, when I'm on TSN, and he starts talking about all these people that talk about his leadership qualities in the dressing room. They talk about what a veteran presence is going to do and what he does as a person for the young players. He goes, "Yeah, that's great, but I want to play. I'm a hockey player. It's great that they have these attributes towards me, but at the end of the day, I want to be paid to play the game, not because I'm a great guy." And honestly, I think when you look at a situation like Vegas, they might be the one slight difference in the fact that I think they're going to need some bridge players eventually. When do we really expect the Golden Knights to be significant? Well, I don't think it's like past years where you see an expansion team and they're horrible for 8 to 10 years. I just don't think the NHL's like that, quite frankly, because there's so many good hockey players. Now, how they build it, how they move on from here, I don't know. But getting back to my original question, if we're talking about Jagr, if you're talking about Doan, you're talking about Jerome McGinley, are we saying that there is not a market for those players? I think even emotionally, it's interesting to talk about what they might mean to a franchise. But you're also getting to a day and age when you start putting a dollar figure by it. If you're paying a Jerome McGinley and you believe he's going to be back on the Calgary Flames monetarily, so are you making a cut somewhere? And we're talking about a league now that basically on a nightly basis, as much as there's still some grit, if you don't have pace, if you don't have guys who can turn that thing into a track meet, if you don't have some jets on that first line, you're not competitive. You can't win. Take a look at the two teams who have made the biggest jumps. And, when I look at the Edmonton Oilers, that's kind of what happens when you have the best players, junior players in the world for the last 15 years. At some point, kind of hope that goes through. But for what the Toronto Maple Leafs have done, I've never seen a bigger transformation, not only in an organization, but I think also in the style of play. When were the Toronto Maple Leafs ever known as a team that was exciting? When was that? Because I've been watching that team since I was born. My uncle was the trainer for that team. Actually, one time I had to pick up the phone. It was Harold Ballard. Yeah. Look, calling my Uncle Guy to see if his boat was ready in Midland, because that's what Guy did in the summer. So I pick up the phone, and was like, is Guy there? No, I don't think so. Who the fuck is this? I'm 10. You know, it's just what Harold Ballard was like. But I've never seen a Leaf team that was known as being a team that could play with pace and have some of the young guys that they do. So, once again, if you're bringing on a veteran guy, what is the change that you have to make? And one of the reasons Dale Talon talked about Jaromir Jagr not being in Florida is that he really needs those young guys to dictate the style of play that they need to see to be productive in today's NHL. Is Jaromir Jagr part of that plan? They don't see him as a diminished player, but they see him as someone that won't allow the young guys to go forward in a manner in which they want to play. That's about as simple as I think that he put it. As Dale Talon trying to build and do what he did in Chicago, and we saw exactly what happened in Chicago, they were pretty good. That's about as close as you're going to get to a dynasty in what I think is the new revised word in dynasty. Because do you really think at this point of the days gone by, like in the 80s or further, where you're going to see a team win more than 3 times in a row? Like, I think 2 is unbelievable. For Pittsburgh, that's crazy. I think if you win 2 out of 3 years, or you put together those kinds of runs, we're talking about the Blackhawks, we're talking about the LA Kings, but it's really hard to sustain. I mean, for instance, did Daryl Sutter really need to go? I think for someone like Daryl, after winning those cups and having that redefined word as dynasty, I think he was fine with it. I think, I don't think he has necessarily a problem leaving. In other NHL news, Zibanejad signs a 5-year deal. 5-year deal, $26.75 million for Zibanejad. So roast beef, I'm taking a look at those numbers. There's young Russell. I don't think it's on maybe a slightly high end, but I don't think that's money that people are going, that's outrageous. I think he was going to get in that area. I think the coin was going to be close to that. Anyway, it's just really how the league is, so maybe not that surprising. I think the other thing that we're probably watching at this point is the trade deadline in Major League Baseball. Some of the names coming up, apparently the Texas Rangers are leaning towards trading Yu Darvish. And when I think of how crazy that was when his name came up, about people just paying the amounts of money they did just to have the opportunity to talk to him. Crazy. Because of injury and because I think quite honestly the spiral downwards that the Texas Rangers have found themselves, maybe that you shouldn't be surprised that they're willing to deal that, because guess what? He's going to get a lot of interest. An arm like that is going to find something in Major League Baseball coming back the other way. And almost surprisingly that I'm saying this, the Texas Rangers kind of need that at this point. Now, again, yeah, have they had injuries? Yeah, the Texas Rangers, in almost strange ways. But teams do go through injuries. I mean, it's just part of professional sport. But the Texas Rangers should have been so much better than what they are. I mean, if I'm looking at teams of sheer disappointment, I got to be putting the Texas Rangers in there somewhere. Now, for the Toronto Blue Jays, it's been talked about, sellers. But at some point, you've got some contracts like Tulowitzki's that you're not getting rid of that. If you're talking about Russell Martin, how much gas do you think he's got left in the tank at this point? And who's going to use a veteran guy like that? But I don't think you have a longevity. I don't think the term's probably there. Bautista has enough money that he could literally buy the Dominican Republic, I believe. He also has the kind of, if people don't know this, a business prowess that is equal. He's one of the few guys in the Caribbean, one of the players that actually has a university degree. The guy just has some severe business smarts. So he knows exactly what he's doing. He's very calculated with this. They're saying it's unlikely that Jose would waive his no-trade clause. So what his future is, I don't know. But Josh Donaldson, I mean, if you're talking about trading him, boy, that's a huge piece. But what that would say to me, if you're Shapiro, if you're Ross Atkins, and that's the conversation you're having, and look, there'll be a lot of people that are going to be interested in Josh Donaldson. But if you're telling me that you're going down that path, then if Josh can go, then who can't go? Now you start talking about a lot of names on that list, and are we really saying at that point for the Blue Jays that they're at the point where they're going to need a total rebuild? because I wouldn't have initially seen it as a total rebuild. But what is the thing that we've learned about professional sports? If you think you can tinker, then you better be very close to the top of the standings in your given sport if you think that's going to work. Because really what you're talking about is being all in for that moment, for the few tweaks you have to make. But that is not the majority of teams in any professional sport. Because if you think you can kind of rebuild, or there's a half rebuild, every time I hear that sounds to me like a bit of a snow job for your fans, and those teams tank. Those teams, and not in the word I'm saying, but they tend to go really south because you can't kind of fix something. If you're going to do it, you got to go all the way. And there are very, to me, few examples of what teams and franchises are willing to do to actually get to the end zone or lift the trophy by going right down to the wood. And as I talked about yesterday, actually, on the Fan 960, the Toronto Maple Leafs did as big a gutting through the entire organization that I've ever seen. The results show it. I think that they do. But, I mean, we're talking about scouting staff. We're talking about people on the medical staff. You know, we're talking about people, quite honestly, that we really don't necessarily mention when you say rebuild. You're not talking about an entire staff, but they did. And it is that kind of philosophy, I think, if you're totally going to do that, then that indeed is what rebuild is. You're watching rawmicrichards.com, either on the dedicated YouTube channel, and if you're doing that right now, I appreciate all those who are seemingly subscribing every day. And we had some real nice numbers yesterday on every platform, including, if you haven't joined up on Raw Mike Richards' Facebook page, which was kind of cool yesterday. And the biggest thing we want to get you to is, as you go, and if you're going to register on rawmicrichards.com, become part of the Richards Army, you're going to see the Bet Regal logo there. You know, when Dave and I start talking about our picks, and you know what Fridays look like, it's the Dave Bastel foreplay. You know how much you enjoy that. And then my sexy picks of Golden Sex. Who's not just licking their lips thinking about that? But if you're going to get involved in that, we're using Bet Regal exclusively. And I got news: if you've tried to join any of the other offshore, including like the Bet 365s of the world, their licenses have changed drastically. So if you're looking to get an account with one of them, you can't. It's just how their licenses are over in the UK. Do you remember when Bet 365 used to have all their logos? They had all their stuff everywhere. They were on CFL fields. They were on the goalposts. They were everywhere. They had to change it. Therefore, I was looking for someone that was going to understand the market here in Canada, and with apologies to my American friends, it's not available to U.S. citizens. Who's going to understand how to make it easy for us to actually make wagers on whatever sport we want in the world that also includes the live in-play and, of course, the cash-out, which has been big. These are the only guys who fit the bill, and they are brand new. And, by the way, the owner, Canadian, used to play for the Ryerson Rams. You just heard that ovation, because the Ryerson Rams, I don't know if you know them, but they're all the rage. They really are. So we're pleased. So go on, register, and open up an account. Bet Regal, because once we start going in September, you know how busy the show is going to be then. We got a ton of insiders coming. I have more sponsors to talk about. But for Bet Regal, they're going to be really the only play you have. And good news for you, the best play, the most available play. And quite honestly, the one thing that they're really going after is making sure that they have better lines than everybody else. So all of a sudden you don't get hit hard with the juice. You're just starting to win, and we're going to use those numbers exclusively probably starting the next couple of weeks. And I also mentioned, in Toronto, if you're around, we're going to figure out a way how to get your invites to you, but we're going to have really sort of the grand launch of rawmicrichards.com together with Bet Regal on August the 26th, which is the Conor McGregor fight. He's a bunch of bitches. I can't wait. I know what everyone's saying. He's not going to win. Here's what I think is interesting. A counterpuncher versus another counterpuncher, which means I think that fight probably goes to the distance. I don't know if anyone's getting knocked out. And if it does, and you figure that the better boxer would be who? Might be Mayweather. It's 3 times your money. It's a 3. I'm giving you a gift. It's not even Christmas. 3 times your money. If it goes over like 8.5 rounds, it's like double your money. I don't see how the fight doesn't end up being that. And once again, if you're registered on Bet Regal, that money is all yours. Geez, I almost did like a weird John Wells thing there. I don't know if you caught that. And if you do, you'll win some money. I don't know where that came from. I haven't had a drink yet, and I'm in a bar, and here at the casino, and I think that's unfair as an Irish person.
You both are fucking bitches.
Kyrie Irving, one trade away. Seriously? So after the championship teams that were built, we talked about yesterday, they're talking about his Kobe moment. There was a time where I probably really liked Kyrie Irving, and now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, you drag LeBron into it? What did LeBron do to you? Oh, I know. Got you a championship and put you in the conference final and a championship every year until he stays. Now, if you want to stay one more year, that we're guessing LeBron will before apparently half the league goes to Los Angeles, I don't get it. Because guess what? If you figure you're that good, you need to get away from LeBron to have your own Kobe moment, if you want to put it that way. Are you that good? Do you realize how hard it is in the league to be, and I'm not talking about basketball a number one, but I'm just saying the number one guy in the NBA that's going to take a team all the way like LeBron does each and every year that he plays the game? Kyrie, are you that good? Are you going to a team where they will look to you and you will get that same job done? I don't think you are. I think you're an excellent player. I think there are moments where I look at what Kyrie Irving does, and I think he can be almost a freakishly good athlete. But really, you're going to give that up just because of ego? Because you want to be that number one guy? Well, good luck. Good luck, because I don't think it's going to happen. And if you're going somewhere, where is it going to be where you really believe that you're going to get back to where you just came from? Because I got news for you. It's going to be Cleveland again next year. It's not going to be Boston. It won't be Boston. Boston will be improved, and they'll lose to Cleveland. And you're looking at a bunch of teams in the East, unfortunately, again, that are going to be the also-rans. Raptors, quite frankly, what did they do in the offseason that makes you think they're in the category of the Cleveland Cavaliers? They might even be in the category of the Boston Celtics. What about Milwaukee? What about the Bucks? Is Orlando going to be better? What about if Chicago ever gets their crap together? I just think you have a whole bunch of also-rans, and you have Cleveland. You are a major part of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it's not good enough for you. Not good enough. To me, it's the part that makes the association a little nauseating. And then at some point, 3 or 4 of your friends get together, and you have this magical this team of super friends. It's annoying. It's why I probably watch college basketball more than I do the NBA. Because at least when you go and you're given that jersey, you make a commitment to a university. I put it on, I see the owl or the roadrunner or a bull or a duck. At least I know for a couple of years, that you're playing for that. Not the name on the back, but the name on the front. And I think at some point that means more than anything. It's why I like college sports. So I would like to thank everyone who joined us today, and that would be Katrina LeMaydon, who joined us. And I think I should say this publicly. I'm looking at her while she's on the show, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to tell you what I'm thinking. I was going to go down. I was going to say something, and Jade, the lovely Jade here, who represents the Elder River Casino, is going, "Don't say it. Don't say it. We need people to come here." Is she stunningly gorgeous, though? Honestly, why couldn't this be the prom? I was really good at the prom. I was the prom king, as you would imagine. But my God, still stunning, like all our national athletes, just the best. And by the way, if you're watching here in Calgary, do you want the Winter Olympics? I mean, I know it's 2026. But is that something that you would like to see in the city again? Because there's a lot of cities who think, yeah, I prefer that my children don't see a bankrupt city, or I don't see all the things that go into the infrastructure. The only thing is with Calgary, you got a lot of that. And you've got people who have done it before. Even still, almost 34 years later, you've got facilities that still work. Would you like to see, even if it's a partial hosting of the World Cup, so I'm talking soccer now, footy, would you like to see that in Canada? I see that, to me, is a much easier path, a much easier road. But Calgary, not unlike Vancouver, but I'd say, Vancouver happened because of Calgary. Calgary was the precursor to that. They laid the foundation. Could Calgary do it again? And if you're in Calgary, is that where you want your money spent? I think they could do it. I have no question that it could get done. It's just a matter of the people who live here. What is that legacy? So we'll see. I think it's also pretty exciting. We talked about that today, too. So tomorrow we have, how many? We got Big Tuna's coming in for sure. Bruce Covington's coming in. And we'll see who else shows up. Maybe Katrina, if you're watching, might want to come by again, and we could talk about swimming and I'm back. So thanks for joining us here today. Thanks for signing up. Once again, I'm going to be here every 3 months, and we look forward to it. I'm just trying to find Rusty, the music to go out with. We appreciate the Elbow River Casino. It is the home of Mike Richards here in Calgary. And there it goes. Let's try it. Here it comes.
What?
Did we just become best friends?
Yup.
You want to go do karate in the garage?
Yup.
It's time!
Okay, so tomorrow, some of the characters that people are asking for, they will show up tomorrow. This is the first long-distance remote that we've done where we actually have people here on site. So we're learning as we go along. So tomorrow, you're actually going to see some clips. You're actually going to see a couple of voices. If you'd like to request a voice, you can do that at Twitter. At Raw Mike Richards. Who do you want to hear? I know Al Montoya / Tony Montana showing up. That one, not for the kids. I'm just saying. Yeah, like this show is. Have yourself a great day. Thanks for watching.